Okay, it's about 6 o'clock. Got 4 people logged in out there, and got one fellow in the room. So it's kind of a quiet night. What you got in politics or news in general? Democratic debate tonight. New guy on stage, Michael. Michael Bloomberg. So that'll be interesting for some. Let's see. We started talking about attribute control charts, and last week, and we'll finish off the book on attribute control charts. The common ones. You can probably generate some specialty classes of these. Any discrete distribution, you could probably get an attribute control chart for. Then I decided to throw in some of my stuff. Okay, so and most of this stuff has been conference papers and presentations. Well, for this reason, motivation was much more for conferences than there was getting things published. That may change. So we'll go over a tentative schedule. We'll finish attributes. We'll talk about quality tools survey and this thing I call Beached. On the right after election day on 16, I took a trip to Miami Beach. So no, Miami itself, but I wanted to get something, the acronym match up a little bit with it. And these are the books. Some of the slides are from the 6th edition, and some of the problems are too. And who's here? Tyler's here. And the 7th edition of the book, and the 8th edition has a cover like that. Kevin's here. Kevin Pitak is here. Kevin Thompson's not. Or is he just in the other class? I'm so confused. Contact information hasn't changed. Actually, what's changed, last thing changed in that contact information is the room of my office changed since I taught this last. And Antonio decided to make it here. This is where we are now. Next week, Ash Wednesday, you guys have an exam, so don't party too hard on Mardi Gras. It isn't a big thing in Rapid. I don't know. Sturgis. They have a Mardi Gras in Sturgis, or might be Deadwood. It's yeah. Okay. So we're So about the exam, I did send out the study guide. What was it? Sunday? Saturday? Sunday. Sunday. Yeah, so fair amount of details, kind of annoying amount of details was on Sunday. All right. Yeah, so I was working on Sunday. Evidence of that. Uh, so calculations and short answer. And I actually did put a few matching in there. I haven't done many matching questions, but it seemed to fit this time. Brian's here. And the same, 2 exams and an end assignment. Hopefully that end assignment still makes sense. Control charts for attributes, and we work through we worked to just about here, ended the discussion on control charts for fraction not conforming, and then there's the count system. And we'll work through some of those and talk a little bit about the choices here, and how to implement control charts. I don't think I have much on that. Then we'll get on to my stuff. And I got like over 100 slides, so yeah. So this is the chapter 7 overview, and we talked about this stuff already. Now we'll talk about the C charts and P charts, proportion defective, and then P charts, just the number of proportion non-conforming, and proportion in the count non-conforming. Then we'll move on to the C charts. Well, the term attributes, call them other things other places, but these are discrete items, either counts or categories. And conforming or non-conforming are the words that have become popular in professional quality circles describing these things. And that was, I don't know, 30-year discussion of, we don't really want to say defective. Ace is here. Ace was actually in the room last night for the exam. Oh, I guess Kevin's here. Did you actually look at your exam, or the exam I tried to put in D12? Did you look? Or? Okay. Because I don't know if I gave instructions right or put it up right or didn't click something. Let's see, where were we? This is just about where we were. We were on this slide. We talked about attributes, and there are some rules about developing a P chart. Sometimes you're just kind of left with what you have, and talking about the out of control low on a P chart. We have a problem. Something went too right. It's like, don't want to say that. It's like, we're not catching enough. There might be a problem with the measurement system. We should check it, because we're getting too much of that. That usually doesn't make you sound as is irresponsible. So an NP chart that counts variable sample size, variable control limits, and you would also have with variable sample size a variable center line. So look pretty ugly. You can go with average N or standardized, and OC charts and ARL calculations. We had a few of those. Now another chart, the C chart. It works like a Poisson distribution, and oddly enough, the way to think about a Poisson distribution is pretty similar to what the word means in French. Poisson is the French word for fish. Okay, and how many fish you actually catch, you might have to catch and release, but is a discrete number, but it's unbounded practically, right? You don't have a bound. So the Poisson distribution works for that, and it also gives you infinite series. So it's set up as an infinite series of probabilities that add up to 1. And it's a very common infinite series. We know this because it has some of the components of the infinite series for E. So this is it. And we can get in situations where we're looking at flaws or defects the same way. So a number of imperfections in any physical object, a rug, a dish, a table, a bolt of cloth, a roll of carpet, all those things have, you can count the flaws in them and measure and use a C chart to measure them. Poisson distribution has sort of a nice characteristic. It has this parameter C, and its mean and variance are both C. So that's real convenient. So our control chart with our general control chart rule is this, and that has some fun descriptions. So there's a example 7.3. We have circuit boards. We have 26 samples of them, and we have a total of 516 total nonconformities in these circuit boards. I'd never worked with people inspecting circuit boards, but they can get pretty complicated. Yeah, those were sort of on the other end of the shop where I worked. So 516 divided by 26 is 19.85. So when those circuit boards come to inspection, they also go to repair, right? So the trial control limits are C bar is equal to 3 C bar plus, and we get 33.2 and 6.48 as our control limits, and center line, and we can then check each of those 26 boards in sequence and plot a control chart with them. And oh my gosh, we have 2 out of control points, And looking this over, we kind of realized there was an inspection error on that one board, which had 5 nonconformities in it. And there was a temperature control problem, which showed all kinds of problems with this circuit board. So both of those are there. So what do we do? Well, we should throw those out and see what we get. We can revise things. We'll have 24 boards here because we threw out 2. We have a few fewer non-conforming. What are we calling those things here? Non-conformities. And we could read off how many we're going to need to subtract. Looks like 5, looks like 40. So reducing our number by 45 on that, I think, give us our 472. Now we have 19.67, 32 point. So numbers actually don't change that much. We have our revised control chart, and with those new control chart limits, we run a second control. We'll run those numbers we had before and plot another sample on them, and it looks pretty good. That might be a trend there, but still looks pretty good. Out of controlled action plans. And have a OCAP's kind of a nice sounding acronym. What is this? Well, when we do get something that's out of control, we should give instructions to somebody to do something about it. That makes a whole lot of sense. And if you want to argue the value of a control chart, you don't have much of an argument if you can't even say what you're going to do when you're out of control. I mean, now your out of control action plan isn't something that comes out of a book like this one. It can't be. I mean, it just generally can't be. You have to have somebody who knows the technologies and the science and business and regulations and policies and all of that. So cause and effect diagrams. So one of the things you could consider is pre-preparing a cause and effect diagram to have some people maybe do a diagnosis and talk through it. Once we do have, and we could also do some Pareto charts, particularly very often we can categorize our nonconformities, and we have a use then to have a Pareto chart, and then we can then prioritize what we do to improve things appropriately. And when it comes to Pareto charts, we'll tell you in a few slides. Well, I don't know if we'll get to those, but they are in the slides for today, who invented them. And we had that a few weeks ago too, so maybe you remember. It's also might be a nice question for next week. Okay. and talk about cause and effect diagrams. We'll look at them again. If you're working on a whiteboard or a chalkboard kind of situation, um, you make them look like this fishbone diagram, and have the procedures to go through the general way of doing this in the later slides. Uh, in other words, you hold a discussion and try to make a diagram like this of what contributes to your things. Uh, Depending on what you have in the room, um, I know what I was thinking of doing. Uh, uh, yeah, we could, if you have like the 16 by 9, you could instead do an outline format if you have a word processor, and that might be a little neater. Just trying to build that. You start thinking you have like a landscape, put word in the landscape mode and put in like 3-4 columns and type away. Might be neater for this. There are drawing tools for this, and it's one of the features in Visio. And you can there are other drawing tools for diagrams, and Dia is one of them. It's kind of old, but it's still around. So this is a Pareto chart, and this be good for circuit board kinds of things. And here it's like insufficient solder is the big thing on this. So we've got to look at that and, as a problem. Uh, oh. So we've got some things about C charts. They're about these nonconformities or flaws that we can find in this big object. And it has a Poisson distribution. It also could be the number of, let's say, general errors in a day in a processing system. Um, as long as we could do that, there is an argument for revising charts when we do that. And we talked a little bit. There is a need for a out of control action plan. When you do those, it's good practice. You're going to go to the work of developing a control chart. You should have this, and if you can't get the out of control action plan together, you probably don't have much reason for the control chart. And we talked through just a little bit about cause and effect diagrams and Pareto charts, and they can be used in conjunction with our OCAPs. Now, we talked about the number of nonconformities on a circuit board, a rug, a bolt of cloth, maybe the painted surfaces of a refrigerator, or any kind of thing like that. Now, we may be able to inspect more than one of these objects and have that be our sample. So what we would then have is we would take N samples and get average number of nonconformities per unit. So the total nonconformities divided by the total number of units is our U, and U also has as properties a no, it doesn't exactly. It's still based on a Poisson distribution. However, it has these control limits. Okay. Um, not not the neatest thing to calculate the probabilities with, but it's there. The x is still Poisson, even though we're adding them together. It's the nature of Poisson distributions. When you add them together, they're still Poisson. It's not a common property of distributions, but that's one where it does work. Um, so we estimate the number of errors per unit shipment to be this, and the parameters of the control chart are this and that. For example 7.4, I don't remember just what those were. So we can build our control chart with that. Now our calculations might lead us to have a lower control limit less than 0. What does this look like? The same thing we saw with binomial. The shape of the distribution is such that it has a long tail to the right, a bit of a spike. And so the 3 sigma below the mean happens to be a negative number, and we can't have a negative number. So we'll just call our lower control limit 0. Uh, it's actually for the Poisson having a lower control limit. Poisson kind of charts lower control limits set to 0. That does make a whole lot of sense when you realize your sampling amounts on average, well, commonly would just find 0 nonconformities. So you commonly would want to call 0 in control. So here's a U chart, nonconformities per unit. That one looks pretty good. There are some other things that have been developed. A compound Poisson chart has been developed where we have multiple Poisson distributions coming together. There is a negative binomial, which has a special case called the geometric, which we saw in our discussions of continuous control charts. The distribution of the run length had a geometric distribution. Now, the negative binomial is the geometric is how many counts we go till we find one observation of interest. Here it would be nonconformities, the number of counts we go there for the geometric. The binomial is the generalization of that, is one of the generalizations of that. We might not have to just wait for one, okay? We might talk about waiting for 3 or 5. If 5 come too early, we can do that as a control chart. Then there are some specialty charts, G and H charts, which are listed and referenced. Now, if we have variable sample size in a U-chart, which we could have certain inspections rules that we may have more than we may want we may get something different than a standard number. We can vary the U and the C on the chart. Again, see the UCL and LCL could vary on the chart. Center line will stay the same. We could average in and get constant UCLs and LCLs. That makes some sense. And there's a standardization form too, where we get a Z and it plots this way. Um, you'd have to have, uh, again, have to be in a work situation where people are comfortable with Z's. Example, this is a little odd. For a U chart, the N doesn't actually have to be an integer. So in the sense that you can have like half a standard roll. Okay. And those are per inspection unit, whatever that happens to be. So we've worked through that and we get some strange number of inspection units. Oh, okay. So we'll get a few of those. And then we can go through and uh, get our control limits. And our U chart looks like that. So we have our alternating subgroups, and that looks pretty good. If we ran the same thing on a standardized chart, this shape looks roughly the same, and it's still in control, although ugh, it's a little harder to interpret just what that means. Now, we run into this choice sometimes. We have these attribute charts, and they seem nice, and they seem somewhat easy to do. And if you noticed, we don't have to look up any constants. And calculations seem the hardest thing is the square root. So maybe we should use them, and keeping records of all these individual numbers might be a little bit more difficult than just the counts of the defectives. So attributes seem to be some winners in convenience style. Now, sometimes you only have attributes. You'll have a difficult time if you have, for example, um, uh, the color changes in melting glass when it doesn't cool correctly. Um, those are really hard to sort of put a variable on. um, and others. Um, so we have sometimes attributes are the only way or the only convenient way. So if you can't get a variable in a quality control sense, get an attribute. But what we like about variables is they signal faster, okay, with fewer n in general than attributes, and that's a big deal. Um, you can always turn variables into attributes. So when it comes to the data taking exercise, if you're grabbing a variable, grab the variable. And if there is some reason to to look at attributes, yeah, uh, unless for some reason it's just plain cheaper to do the attributes, um, you probably want to stick with the variables. Now, this is relatively subtle. When we get out of control with variables, very often we'll get a negligible change in the number of nonconformities. It's just the process has changed and has gotten somewhat worse. However, our spec limits are far enough away that they're tolerant to that, but we realize we have a problem, and we realize we have a problem that our process has changed, but we don't have a problem that we're creating new nonconformities that we have to deal with. That's sort of a nicer problem. You can get it fixed before it costs you much. Now with attributes, you're just counting the number of nonconformities. You have those nonconformities to deal with, always. So you have that preference towards variables. So a little summary of U-charts. We've had some U-chart formulas. We have alternative count models and variable sample size adjustments for U-charts, and some discussion then of attributes versus variables, and we prefer variables if we can get them, is sort of the summary on that. And we'll go through, talk through most of these except rational subgroup concept for attributes. Those, I guess, are more pragmatic. Run lengths for attribute control charts. Again, we don't combine the terms, so the ARL of independent terms would be roughly, the 1 over P again. So nothing surprising there. Oh, not this P, the other P. uh, one, uh, 1 over alpha or 1 over 1 minus beta. Ta-da! Quality tool surveys. Just a thought. A lot of times, if you look at people who do research related to social sciences or problem solving or data gathering for open-ended questions, they have discussions or note takings or interviews or those kinds of things, and they generate long lists of text of what people talk about, and then they summarize them in shorter lists. what you could do is just have people make a list, but then you're kind of like a factory engineer, and they won't publish you in any social science journal. But if that isn't your goal, if it's internal to a company, maybe you don't want to. What was that? Uh, maybe you'd be just as happy with uh, this kind of sloppy outline or cause and effect diagram. Well, we haven't talked about how we make these, but uh, there is a trick. Uh, if we had each person, if we got a modest sized group of people in a room instead of a whole room full, we could play some games and sample that as groups individually drawn fishbone diagrams and compare those and make some judgments of how big the true complete fishbone diagram would be if we had like everybody. And there are some techniques for that, and that's kind of useful because it tells us how many people actually have to spend time working on this, and we can make a trade-off for how completely we are versus how much money we've spent, which is useful. Much of what's done in like focus groups is the people who do the focus groups often say, well, to be sure, we'll just take all the money you have for this. And some people are a little uncomfortable with that. But if you tell instead, we'll have you fill out these charts and do these calculations and verify, and then give you some judgmental number that you could use to go on, you don't feel like you, uh, some people don't want to hear it. The other thing is, we can ask questions instead of rating things and grading things 5 or 10 different ways. We can ask questions over the whole fishbone diagram and get a Pareto chart result. Now, that's a different kind of question than what normally you'd say. You wouldn't like go down your idea form and go 1 through 5, 1 through 5, 1 through 5 on everything. You'd go with how do you spend time or money, or linear feet or area, or how many, or which thing would you actually want people to concentrate on? The other thing is you can do it on the positive side too. What was good about this? Instead of rating. So we talk a little bit about Ishikawa diagram overview and what we could do. And originally I threw these things together when I had a classroom setting where I could have some people try a few things. We probably, it's hard now because you don't know how many people are showing up in this, and I haven't thought through how to make this work, but we'll overview the Ishikawa diagram, a little bit about it, and maybe we can try its classic format if you guys are up for it. But you know, after 7 at night, these questions aren't always that much fun. We can talk through a modified form. You know, if if we had our 3 hours were 9 in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You could do this pretty well, and I have. Uh, we can go through a few things. So, references, Duran's Quality Handbook. I tried to find that on the online stuff in the library. I spent maybe 10 minutes looking. It used to be there. Has some important authors. Al Gore was there on quality and government. It was vice president under Clinton and ran for president in 2000. And it was close. Let's just say that. Uh, we okay. He decided to get into the movies after this. Also, I realized going through these slides from a while back, this webpage is still there. I have on this, but some of the links are not verified. I didn't go through to see if they're still there. I'm not even sure I know how to get to this anymore. It was an older form of getting web pages, but it's still there and still got some of my older things there. Um, um, and I grabbed a lot of pics off the web for these. So what can we say about Karo Ishikawa? The American Society for Quality, last time I looked, had 4 major awards, and the one for humanity and quality went to Karo Ishikawa, and this is an old picture of his. And when we look at this picture, is there something that he doesn't like? And maybe we can guess there. So he has these 4 points that totally encompass his beliefs, that there's a revolution in the philosophy of management. That is, management in humanity, management in which humanity is respected. Okay. So this is a guy who sort of grew up around uh, World War II times. So a lot of changes in his thoughts, that we need to look at controlling all the quality aspects of an organization. So all the aspects should be improved and workable. So you can't run, you know, sloppy, poor systems in an organization in parts of it, and then you have others work well. He liked the idea of catchphrases that are adapted to the trends of the times. You know, when you're as old as I am, you don't always know what what the trends of the times are, but there are some exceptions about that. So the quality first concept. In other words, the organization runs to serve its customers, and sometimes the customers are kind of vague. Polaroid cameras, you know about how those work, and now people are building similar things as novelties. Although in practice, pictures usually go online and never see print. But Polaroid for the longest time lost money. However, it was such an important idea to people that they just threw money at the company, even though they lost money. But it was really cool to have to take a picture and have it in your hand in a minute or whatever it was, and then you could play around with it and do things, and yeah. So who was the customer there if you were losing money for the people buying stuff? No, it was sort of this general photographic community that wanted to see that technology work. And it still is kind of impressive. Uh, no, I mean the customer satisfaction. You can you can tell a customer they're wrong about some things or confused, or but you can leave them satisfied if you can tell them they were confused. A customer says physics doesn't work this way and it does. They're not right. Yeah. So haven't really read that much of his stuff. Anyway, so it's the only picture I found a few years ago. However, I didn't look too hard to find a picture of him a little older. His Wikipedia picture is older than this, so I still didn't look like like getting his picture taken. So a couple of things. Quality control. Yeah, that's the one. That's a Wikipedia picture. Yeah, looks a little older. Quality control begins with the interaction of people. And he came up with this quality circles concept, which made sense in Japan, but tried to exploit it other places. You have to have a friendly circumstance for it, though, is that work groups themselves can be taught quality tools and address the problems in front of them. So um, you have to have a management system that will listen to its workers. Whoa. uh, Not there. And what looks like our Magnificent Seven was his 7 tools of quality, or his basic tools. Um, Looks a lot like those. Um, and so here's a first Ishikawa diagram and a summary of this. And this is actually kind of a common way to do it. At times people didn't like to use this masculine form. However, methods management materials, manpower is easier to remember, and we have an effect. And it's a common way to start a Ishikawa diagram. And I pulled the picture off the web, and I kind of stole it, I guess. Um, and here's another one. If we look at quality air travel service, we might want to break things up as pre-flight, post-flight, and in-flight services. I don't know. My wife put me on some very cheap airlines over the years, Ryanair in Europe, Spirit here, and uh, what's the one that runs from Phoenix to here? Yeah, can't remember either. Uh, Allegiant, yeah, Allegiant. Yeah, she put me on these cheap air flights. And oh, uh, uh, and then some of them are the fact that you get smaller airports in Phoenix and um, Rome is convenient on some of the airlines. The There's some of the other stuff. I don't always. So we've seen this before. What happens could cause you to lose control of a car from the Duran Institute. It's kind of still around, but they call it just Duran. So I looked on that. Um, Nothing too surprising there. In Ishikawa's book, Guide to Quality Control, on page 24, he has this. So we could maybe get completely away from our usual thing and use a flow kind of process if it lays out correctly for a cause, and still call it a cause and effect diagram. Another one for improving interfacing between quality circles. That looks like it's difficult to do. And can I move this? Yeah. The cause and effect diagram, I think we've mentioned it before. I just happened to be talking to someone who was like writing instructor, and nowadays they teach people to make Ishikawa diagrams as a pre-writing tool. In other words, the hard thing about writing is getting your thoughts down on paper, and if you can just get some of the words in some places and put them in some order, you can start. And when you can see a few gray-haired people around who were in school before there were word processors. Uh, you don't, if you're in the room, you don't have to look very far. uh, but you were often instructed to make an outline. However, it's a near impossible task to make a complex outline without having to erase what you're going to do on a board or a sheet of paper. And if you have a problem erasing, like if you've got pencil and paper, it really isn't a good pre-writing way. Uh, Making an outline, if you have a word processor, you move things in and out and just hit a few tabs to move things back. Uh, th- that that wouldn't be a bad idea. Uh, so we have those. Uh, it's in Visio. It's a Microsoft related product, Office related product. I don't know the technical term for it. And Microsoft can probably get it to university machines for SDS and T machines. It used to be on the classroom computers. I remember doing this stuff in 2008 with the Visio. I'm not so sure it's still there. Okay. I do think there probably is a way to get a university license, but I I haven't looked. So cause and effect diagram used to be in older versions of Visio. I don't assume they've taken it out. Is there a cheaper piece of software that will help you draw a cause and effect diagram? Um, would you be better off building an outline in Word? I don't know. Now, here, I might have shown this before. Um, you can take a cause and effect diagram and make it into an outline in like writing discussions. Uh, mathematicians will call these kinds of things trees, and these indented lists, and in operations planning books, this is sometimes just sort of a Gazinta diagram, and this is a bill of materials. So this is not a novel idea. Okay, they're just around here. You can go back and forth between these kinds of things. Um, so how does this Ishikawa diagram work? That's classical style. Uh, let's just say we start out, we walk into a room, we're called together uh, in like a factory setting. We're going to address a problem. You're invited, you're supposed to know what's there. It's a group activity. Somebody's got a whiteboard or chalkboard, and you start out doing this. You ask what are the important categories. If it's a manufacturing problem, those five of machines, materials, measurements, management, and people, you can put in there and maybe start from there, and then just wait for people to make suggestions of how it goes. And there isn't a true formal stopping rule. However, there are some very nice things about doing this. Everyone makes a short statement on their contribution, doesn't give a history of its importance, why it's there. You get a lot of ideas out of people without too much redundancy or people talking too long. Uh, you might want to see that, me go through one of these just because I wouldn't talk too much. uh, you kind of assume everyone's in the room. However, and that gets your sampling size down. Uh, however, even in Ishikawa's book, you might have somebody who's working another shift who might have a contribution. So what you do is maybe uh, you take a paper drawing of what was on the board, or uh, nowadays you can get a picture of anything and print it, because most people are carrying a camera in their pocket that could be attached to. Right. And they can send pictures all over the world. So I don't know, Kevin. Which night's worse, Tuesdays or Wednesdays? For thinking Wednesdays. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes people, after they get all the things together, contribute. They vote on what they do afterwards. Uh, there are some activities that we could do. Ishikawa's book has how to cook delicious rice. Uh, what do you do? It was written for a Japanese audience. Okay, they eat a lot of rice. Okay, what's that? Ecuador, you guys eat a lot of rice too? Beverly's family, more so than you did in Spain, or oh, okay. So they okay. So in Spain, you cook everything in with the rice, and then in uh, said in South America in general, the rice is cooked separate and then served. Okay. like that's most often how it's done in the Philippines too. That although they sometimes do like a fried rice thing, but all right. So talking about Antonio about rice, I have not been to Spain. Uh, I have not been to Spain. However, I was in Portugal and I did have a few dishes like you described. So yeah. Uh, all right. Uh, Here at the School of Mines, I've gone through this a few times with people discussing how to make hamburger. Um, Sounds what would makes a good hamburger, and probably the most fun time I had is I had a group of students who were going into ninth grade, Native Americans, and they wanted to talk about making fry bread and what makes good fry bread and all this. Very often when it comes to cooking, you know, we've got this, people involved, and yeah, if you're cooking a hamburger, yeah, you can put some specs on the person who's cooking it, right? Just as a safety thing, because you're frying stuff. Rice, you could probably cook a little younger if you've uh, less danger of a fire. Uh, and uh, there's certain cookie recipes where you ball up the cookies. You could have like a 4-year-old put those on a tray. So you have some discussion about this, and the one Native American boy was just so serious that when he said, "You have to be a grandmother to make fry bread." It was just so sweet. Uh, and I almost didn't want to tell him no. uh, no, you can do it when you're 16. When you're uh, no. So, should we try that? Should we try a classic style outline, or you guys want to get out a little earlier? Hmm. You want to try doing? You want to talk about how you make a hamburger? Okay. Okay. Let me see if I can escape this. Escape. New slide. Oh, we were gonna go to Word. You want to try it? See if I can throw Word up and. All right. Get some different software up there. Word and blank document and let's see, layout. Why we got orientation, uh, landscape, and view. Let's see, zoom, text width, page width. Oh, one of those, text width. Okay. And let's go with layout, margins, narrow margins. We'll take a few things and uh, let's see, designer, the column, no, the columns are in the, how many columns do you think we should use for this? Go with 3. Okay. So generally, uh, try and cook something as an example, but we can do something else if you want. But it should be something that's sort of common experience that people can comment on. Uh, you want to cook pizza? Oh, Well, it's just I had some students and uh, when I was doing flipped class for the undergrad quality, I had them do one of these Ishikawa diagrams, and I had a group of mostly international students making a pizza, and it was like there was so much stuff on that thing, and yeah, camel cheese, it's like, oh man, that was. So a lot of the international students, it's common when they pick to work in different groups. So yeah. Okay. So do you want to do a pizza, or does that get too? It's not. It's not like there's a common idea of what a pizza should be, though. So do you guys want to talk about pizza? Okay. Delicious pizza. Pizza. Should we go to a bigger font? What do you think? Delicious pizza. All right. Uh, should I go to a more narrow paragraph setting? I think I should. Backspace, home, and where is the paragraph? Is it in design? Is it in layout or is it design? Is it design? Paragraph spacing. Uh, let's go with no paragraph spacing. Okay. All right. So we're making a delicious pizza and do a little tab. Um, just go with the default tab. So what are our criteria for making the pizza? The usual manufacturing then are these people, machinery, materials, processes, management. Well, we want to go into like great categories of what we'll need. Okay, the overview categories. In manufacturing, you might go with materials, um, and then machines that we would use, um, which people would we use, and what were the other ones? Management, and what was a processes term? Um, procedures, yeah. So why don't we just go with methods? That's what it is. Yeah, they're all M's, except we went with people because we didn't want to say men. Okay. I don't know. Try to convince a woman to cook a pizza. That's not. For the people in the room, that might be something that we all desire to be able to do. Or all guys in the room and just uh, okay. Materials. We got some subcategories under materials, or subcategories under any of these things you want to talk about, Bill? Tab. You want to just call? I think a pizza can be a one-person job. Right. I mean, do you envision a pizza being more than one person job? Yeah, I've been to Blaze. Yeah, I mean, but but it, but you can have a pizza place, which is one person working if it's running a little slow. And yeah, I don't know if you need. I do we can just you can make a good pizza with one person. Okay, all right. So we got one person who's a cook. Let's see. Machines, you're gonna need an oven, right? You need an oven. Uh, oven. Uh, oh, material. No, that would materials wouldn't be. I'm in the wrong machines. We would have. You just want to throw in the oven. Gotta make a pizza in an oven, huh? No fried pizza, right? So we can have the characteristic of a stone fired. It just doesn't work right unless it's a stone walled pizza. There is actually a pizza place on 16 Stonewalls. Yeah, yeah. I've had breakfast there. Oh, okay. Sometimes I've had breakfast there. Uh, I it was pretty good. I just ate there one time for breakfast, but um, I don't know. It's located in a place I don't generally think of restaurants being. It's in a yeah. Um, oh, okay. So you live sort of back behind the roads? You live west on. Oh, you live near Domino's. Well, so do I. Yeah, I live on Stony Creek Drive in the Autumn Hills area. You live in the Stony Creek Apartments. I live on a road called Stony Creek Drive. Okay, so I live further north of you on uh, the north side of Catron, and yeah, I don't know. It could be Catron. I don't. There, it is somebody's name. Yeah. Well, okay. So people who aren't in Rapid don't know. So it's road. Antonio and I, he lives closer to than I do, I guess, but I don't know. Stone walls. Oven has to have stone walls. Anything else we need? Oh, we need a mixer for we we need a dough mixer. Gotta have a machine for that. You okay? So you're thinking a handmade, hand tossed pizza is better. Frozen pizza. That would make delicious. It's just yeah. I don't know. It's just I'm. That's a story. It's uh, management. Uh, enter. We could just say the cook can be the authority. Yeah, cook could be manager. Uh, cook could be manager. Um, So we've got an oven, we got a cook, we got our management statement. It could be there. Uh, no materials. What do we put on a pizza? We need dough. We need dough. Can't have a doughless pizza, huh? They don't have this like naked pizza or something. I don't know. There was it. Qdoba has naked burrito, right? You just okay, dough. All right. We need a sauce. You don't go with that margarita style. We gotta have a sauce, huh? You're not going with a veggie pizza? Okay. Okay, you've got to have meat on your pizza. Oh, there are some restaurants that have veggie meals here. Okay, what else we got? Cheeses? Have to have some kind of cheeses. You want you need some vegetables. You need some vegetables on our pizza. Oh, spices? You need some spices in there. Do you want to move on to anything else, or I don't know. Well, we can go into we can take another pass at these things. Uh, okay. What? But I still think you can make a pretty bad pizza with all of these things. With this, someone says a spice. Well, you could have ginger instead of oregano. It's like, well, that doesn't seem right. But okay. Do you want to go through some more details, or do we want to put some specifications on the cook? Or do we need we have a process that we have some methods that we like. Uh, okay. Okay. Uh, let's see. We've got dough uh, made first. Uh, do we don't have a pan yet. If it's a material if it's consumed in the process. If we're throwing away our pan, like, do they do that at Blaze? Do they throw them away? I don't know. Yeah, be a machine. So it's uh, it's got to be in a pan. We can't have a pot pizza. Uh, Hi. I can imagine there was a person who at some time tried to build a bowl or pot pizza in the history of humanity. Just a deep dish. Huh? pan. Uh, are we gonna quit out of boredom on this, or okay? Well, it's just that's a problem of we we can go into characteristics like we had the stone walls on the oven, and I don't I don't get a nice pointer here in Word. We would want to say some things about the dough. I mean, they just can't put a cookie dough in, and the sauce is. eh, Oh, I don't know. You go to Pizza Ranch. There's this crazy. Okay, and some people need to have their own kinds of meats. I don't know, but all right. To get the perfect pizza. So you could really argue about which cheeses go on. Yeah. So to make a delicious pizza, we have these, but uh, we educational purposes ended. We've before the complete pizza. Education purpose is finished. Uh, However, we don't have a pizza. We can't tell how to do this, and I should view and zoom uh page width maybe. Hmm. Yeah, that's how far we got. We we did go with columns, and you can see those paragraph marks. They will bounce up into the next column, I think. Yeah. So this might be the way to do this in this kind of setting with a word processor that gives you columns, which sounds like kind of a weak feature of a word processor, but file save as uh, maybe here, and um, CE pizza. Oh man, I probably should have saved that. Uh, we had those guys. They were just. Uh, I don't need the slide. Delete slide. Okay. Um, I've from current slide. We did. That's where we were. We played with this. Uh, so that's a classic style. We all get around the room and have a nice discussion about it. And for the uh, for about three of us in the room, it worked okay. Some guy wasn't real talkative. I don't know. But, that's all right. I if if I keep you here till 8:30, there aren't any, there is a place that has pizza after 8. I don't know how late Domino's is open. You know, let's just see. Um, Classic style. We tried MS Word and an outline, and it works okay to do the outline. It wasn't prohibitive of our discussion. Um, uh, I hadn't remembered this. Dean Jensen's faculty member in IE department, and he suggested something to me, and I had forgotten that he did. That I these slides are kind of old. I don't know how old they are, but what what would we do in building an Ishikawa diagram that instead of all of us kind of in a friendly discussion and um, our work really wasn't very parallel. It was kind of sequential. One person talking, another person talk, another person talk. Um, it isn't really set up for no. We didn't get anybody wanting to chat in on the pizza, for example. But with this is a little bit out of it isn't set up for like a multi-site thing. However, now that we have Zoom, I probably should consider losing this. Maybe I will. Uh, uh, or the comment. Vid conferencing. Services allow multi-site uh, with classic procedure. Oh, uh, so the procedure I did with sort of this extended, it's in general the Ishikawa diagram is somewhat work oriented. You're coming off with this sloppy outline instead of something that you can justify that is a grand academic discussion. Um, uh, uh, there are ways when I extend the procedure that we can check the completeness, and we'll get into some of the details. Not, yeah, we'll throw a few of the sloppy formulas up and you can actually get a measure of it. But I've got this pan up and I don't know where it is. It was over here. Yeah. And I think if you try to undo it in one setting, it will just, yeah. Uh, n- no, when you go and erase, it has an, no, it has a, Where is that? Get pen. Oh, there's eraser. Yeah, okay. Good. Yeah, okay. You yeah. That that time that worked. Okay. All right. So uh, you can check the completeness with some statistical procedures that are used commonly in other areas. Not a real definite set there. So these things, extending it, we have sort of a simple, cheap alternative to what folks in the social sciences and related areas, business would do in sort of a research setting. So the goal is to come up with this summary of what we think of our discussion, which is the same sort of thing you would get in a focus group setting. However, you've got a lot less equipment running. You just um, my extended procedure. Sometimes there's this disagreement in building this, and you could see this. Some of the terms are there. Uh, do we need to in the pizza? There might be some disagreement over well, yeah, what goes on top? Yeah. Uh, is the toppings is necessary? I mean, is pepperoni necessary? You know, I mean, uh, we have the same familiar graphic. It's qualitative, and I'd forgotten this since last time I'd gone through these slides. Putting this procedure together, we were a couple of the other faculty had uh, proposal to the NSF, and this was going to be a small part of it. And uh, it was pretty well reviewed one time. However, it didn't get funded. It just it yeah. There are 100 of these things, and they funded 20, and you were 75 or something like that. And like, yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers or how it was, but it was, you know, and the folks I was working with weren't into just scrounging something instead of you went on to other things. Oh, why it's doing that? I'd forgotten I'd done this. Used it for doing improvements in my 10 a.m. '06 class. That was before I flipped them. And tried this in the simulation class, wanted better problems, and I tried it again, and I forgot what happened in the fall '07 class. There is there was a freshman orientation class I went through and did procedures with, and we used to have this requirement. We If you didn't do a thesis, you had to do a 2 credit hour project class, or almost had to. Yeah, yeah, it was actually easier. You had to either do a comprehensive exam or a 2 credit project class. And we had some people doing this, and um, Only one of these. This guy did some software to try and um, make the questions over uh, the cause and effect diagram easier to do. And another student worked through this scheme as a scheme for helping to coach volleyball. And I don't remember what these other two folks were doing, but I to go forward with this, I was thinking at the time actually have some people try doing this stuff. And I got away from this stuff. I think the fact that we didn't have those ongoing projects sort of, to have a student who would come in and say, I want to do this project. I might start rethinking about this. So here's this procedure. We work together in groups, but we're talking maybe small groups, maybe 5, maybe 7 to start out with. Instead of filling the room of everyone who's concerned. And the first thing you do is decide on which categories you go, like we did, and went with sort of a standard one. Then we'll send everybody off to individually make their cause and effect diagram. Or if they like working with a keyboard, we can do it as outlines. Now that I think about it, we hadn't, I don't think we had the tablet program very long when I was doing the freshman orientation class with this. Probably might have been better to just do it in an outline for them. Though, anyway, so we send the people off individually and they finish it and then they come back together. Mm-hmm. And then you come back and you complete a check sheet and you work out the terminology. You could, in pizza, talk about toppings, or you could talk about meat and vegetables. Although it's possible to have something would be neither, that's a food, like candies. It is entirely possible to put some candy on a pizza. I don't know if I would ever recommend it. However, I am not the most brilliant of cooks. In fact, so we'll have a check sheet and we'll show you that. And then you go back and you give each of your items a code and label and verify it to make sure nothing sort of slipped through the cracks. And then we go back and we try it again. We'll make some additions and then we'll update again and go back on the check sheets. And then we keep going until we have a reason to stop. And then there is also a form where we have some complaint sheets that we go about. So we start out with a form and we label the group and it's a group or an individual sheet, and circle 1 if it's a composite, and the date and the topic. Although that topic might be a little redundant from the effect. But you can also look at like positive and negative effects, and so they're not quite the same thing. And the cause and effect sheet, it has these and the space to draw. And we'll also have a sheet for additions or dissents, so we can have individuals' names, topic, round of the update, what they're uh, adding or dissenting about, and the space to draw. And finally, we'll come out with a check sheet. So we'll have the people's names here, and I actually did have some people doing this, and a good compass exam. Guys, okay. They still do that? Okay. This was a math placement exam, sort of a national math placement exam. And it was important to the freshmen as something to talk about. Um, and this is roughly what that checklist is, okay? So from the information in this checklist, we can have a prediction of how many uh, actual items there are, or how many characteristics or rules are important to making a good pizza, for our example, or how big this list is when our discussion is ended. Now, how would that work? Imagine this was done first, okay? One person's. And then the second time through, which proportions were caught by the second person? And then we can get scales and ratios and talk from there and get one simple estimate of how big it is with just 2. But with 3 or 4, we could play a little more complicated game, and what's on the check sheet contains a table, names run across the top, the causes run across the side. But this is how it actually works. This is stuff that is very, very well developed. And capture, tag, recapture for animals in a field. And you then, in each round, you may get some fresh animals and you may get it there. And I was walking around a class I was teaching, and I was holding this book, and somebody actually told me what this was. And this picture is a national elk reserve in Wyoming. And the elk hunter is just like, oh, please move out of there. You know, all those elk. Anyway, so now let's suppose there are 8 samples, and the samples are the users, and a capture histories or check sheet. And we obtained only 14 animals or causes. So users are the samples, causes are the animals, and you can then just find your way to software for capture recapture stuff, and you can play games with completeness of your discussion. However, that is not all that convenient at the moment, but that software does exist in places. And like I said, I've gotten away from this. It's not on this machine. I I don't have any capture recapture software on here. So one place you can get it, I had worked with the Care 2 package from Anchow, and it's pretty easy to use. Um, however, this link does work. I just checked it today, and Anchow has a prettier website than she had a few years ago, but and more stuff. So what they like to do in population, the question is, we want to measure the completeness of our discussion. So we want to know the total number of causes so we can quit without just claiming we're tired. What they want to do is measure the animal population so that they can do their, ecological studies and so forth. You can do a point estimates and confidence intervals for the proportion remaining. And this 2007 paper with a little bit of a conference paper was a joint statistical meetings, which is sponsored by a few statistical associations, and it's in the US most years, and every so often it's in Canada. So I don't remember where 2007 was. I probably could find out. Hmm. Salt Lake. Anyway, I have that, and that's available. So it was in Salt Lake. Yeah. Found out some weird things about Salt Lake. It's just like uh, have buying alcohol there is strange. It's just in a restaurant. They have some strange rules. I I think you have to buy like a club membership or something. It's really weird. I yeah, it was a while back. Anyway, yeah, oh, no, that was a while back. So this is what the Care 2 did, and this is what I did with some of the IE orientation class. We ran them through this. Mostly wanted them to get to know me at that time. That was considered an important part of the class when Dr. Kellogg was teaching it. So there are a few different rules of how to estimate those, and a few different terms about how to estimate that, and they can spill over. So for that discussion, remember what it was. We had estimates of these kinds of numbers, and have confidence intervals on the population size that look like that, and converted them to the proportion remaining. And with that, depending on the estimator, had like 5 to 9% of the um, proportion remaining of the causes. So do you want to make a judgment of whether you're done or not based on that, or do you just want to calm your fears by spending all your money and saying it's the best you could? This is not clean right now. So, uh, however, uh, so there looks like there might be some reason to sample some more. Some other people might quit. Uh, got to consider if we're asking questions over those. People more likely the things that they would ask questions over um, might come to mind first anyway. So estimate. So here are a couple of the formulas. N is the total number of causes, M plus the observed number of causes at the end of the study rows. K is the number of users, columns. F is the number of causes observed twice, F1 observed twice, and F2 is the number of causes observed twice. So some simple estimating formulas are available, and there are some other rules, and they are more complicated, but those, I guess I typed those all out. So how? I usually just do snips right now or scans. Estimate completeness. What does that fraction tell us? Uh, observed and total possible. Well, it's a proportion complete. And there are many sort of survey, interview, discussion techniques that exist. However, they're usually done to formalize discussions with like social scientists, psychologists formats, and they don't always want to work towards something simple like a factory engineer might, or um, someone in marketing. Um, I'd argue in many of those procedures, the fairness is buried in the complexity. My argument is if you have a moderator in a room that tells you what you should be talking about, like in a focus group, they can steer you away from parts, and you assume that the answer is a full tree. They can steer you away from certain parts of the tree or force you to go detailed into certain areas, and not then give you the full thing that if it was self-moderated, the people working on it themselves had done it. And so, yeah. Uh, so you talk to social scientists and they say, or educations, and they say, do you do any statistics on your focus group? And they say, you just don't understand. There is no data here, no. Although you can take the text, put it in a machine, and it'll give you a list of and it'll give you a list out um, of the important subjects in the summary. And so it's something you can put into the computer that comes out with a list with a set of that could be counted, but there is no statistic you can do with it. Yeah. Uh, uh, you're claiming to solicit opinions, but the rules of a moderator of the discussion um, deny inclusion of things, right? We don't want to talk about that. That's outside the subject, although it's supposed to be relevant. If you have a procedure that has dissent sheets and you can complain and put this in, and this is your reference document, and someone says this is this way, and we should say topics, we should say toppings instead of meat and vegetables, because there could be some topping that goes somewhat outside that category. I uh, I suppose you could have something that's a mixture of both and prepared together. And uh, I, I don't I don't know, something you wouldn't. What is it? Where does toppings and spices sort of overlap? If you like um, cuts, how fine you cut the cilantro is a spice or is it a is it a topping? Yeah. Okay. Well, when you have like a focus group or trained interviewer, usually you have someone trained and educated and wears a suit, leads a discussion. However, if you have a procedure that sort of comes in a quality control book and some friendly software, which there isn't right now, um, you might have some people who could do it without a lot of special training so far. So the unfair procedures would generally favor powerful people instead of those who are there otherwise. So is making a large group fishbone diagram followed by a vote fair and simple? In a large group, you might not get, people might be reluctant to say certain things. Um, and it might not come out. Voting immediately afterwards and not separating the procedure by time or formality or document isn't such a good idea in my mind. Um, so if we modify and replace the large form with sampling, audible documents, and simple reports, it might be better. So there's a book or two to write here. An equality tools survey system. Now the other part we haven't done is this. We have this product, this is this diagram, and I say we can ask questions over that, and there are ways to do that. Uh, Pareto chart. Uh, that's J.J. Duran, the inventor of the Pareto chart. So, and the Pareto charts are usually discussed as just simply counts. However, they don't have to be. So they can be something like hours, cumulative hours spent by warehousing workers on different jobs. So what are the um, people in the warehouse work on? Uh, I I haven't actually worked in it. Well, I've been in warehouse areas of factories a good bit, but and I guess I've been at warehouses also. For a year or so, my father worked in a warehouse. Okay, that's a long story, but uh, we can ask questions on this um, big long list. If we were going to talk about doing something with it, we could spend money, we could spend time uh, over things. Which proportion needs change? Of course, which one thing you would change on that whole list? You could have a pizza and be reasonably satisfied with it and say, change that sausage. It's like, yeah. It's not that the person doesn't know how to prepare it good. Just flip that out. Uh, or which 5 would you change? And when you ask these questions, your first summary of it would be this Pareto diagram, and you could report it at a pretty low academic level, which is nice. I don't think the National Science Foundation would be too interested in it, but okay. So, uh, who we got? Bernardo's coming back. Sometimes the uh, internet services drop a line. Let's see, global review, global questions over a cause and effect diagram. So let's say we're talking about a restaurant, and we have a cause and effect diagram for what goes on at this class of restaurants, or a particular restaurant. Which line describes the best aspect of the restaurant? Pick one. Which lines, if any, describe aspects of the restaurant that should be shown to other restaurant managers as good examples? Pick many. So we can ask these kinds of questions. We're going to do a video to encourage people to go to a restaurant. How much time should be allotted to each line item? No, I mean certain restaurants will feature different things, right? Some will feature the food, some the service, some of the atmosphere, some the drinks, and some the appetizers, main courses, desserts, sides. So what would you put on your 10-minute video for a restaurant? The 10-minute is a remnant. We could also talk about 5 different 1-minute television commercials, and this is what you might ask someone to talk about. And there are trade-offs in restaurant experiences. Do you wait in a long line to get into a restaurant? For some, you do, some you don't. What am I doing here? What line represents the worst aspect of the restaurant? Which lines describe aspects of the restaurants that could be deleted or seriously revised? So here you've got this diagram, and there were decisions made on what went in, what went out, what's there. But over time, things change. Okay. Your original restaurant was at a food court in a mall, and then you moved to a standalone place. Well, the parking lot is now a discussion item. Or the other way, which could be seriously revised or deleted. So if you're now in a food court at a mall, what parking? What? No. If the owner was going to spend 400 hours revising the restaurant of time and study, how much time would they spend on each line? So these are these kinds of questions. Which line, if any, in the outline are irrelevant? So now pull some things out that we don't do that anymore. Okay. I know I was at Cape Asa, and one time I was there, they stopped doing flavored lemonades. I I like I don't know. If you go there at 2 in the afternoon, you get a bartender who that's a challenge for a bartender. I don't know. Well, that's the kind of discussion I have with bartenders. So I'm not a real fun guy. Will you go off menu to make a flavored lemonade for me? Yeah. would you like an additional line or lines in the outline? What would they be? And you can have open response questions. So you've got all these kinds of questions we could ask globally. Global cues. Which line would be most helpful for encouraging restaurant customers? Which line is least helpful? Pick many. So we can go about different kinds. Which lines do you believe are essential to the programs? I didn't put restaurant there. Okay, successfully could be ignored. Proportion. Yeah, I think I got distracted when I was going through this stuff. So this could be something else. How would we spend money on things, and how do we spend time reviewing those, or global questions? Let's see. Compared to other methods going through these, we imagine you go through a focus group and it's biased by the moderators, and then you have questions over that which are ranking on 1 to 5 scale kinds of things. So there's nothing in there that says you missed this, or this is useless, or on the form, and it doesn't update itself and doesn't verify itself, and so forth. However, this procedure does. We can measure the completeness with a short list over a sample. So you can measure the completeness, so you're not wasting your efforts. You can do quantitative questions, and you can come up with your questions before you actually do your diagram, right? Because they're just general things. We know this about making a pizza. There's just lines of effort. It says we have relatively few quantitative questions. So you're not going through a list of 60 things and saying 1 through 5, 1 through 5, 1 through 5 on 60 things, or 40 or something, when you're going through your usual Likert scale rating kinds of stuff. And then we really, really get a Pareto ranking out of these questions. And without sort of a wrong priority, okay? If you've got these 1 through 5 rating things, it doesn't tell you the importance to you, or how you would direct work, or anything practical about what could be done. And this analysis stuff is, you could do much of it at a quality circle kind of level, okay? That, a factory worker who's trained a little bit on this stuff, don't envision that. Ishikawa stuff is widely taught. It ends up being kind of a simple qualitative. You can get it to work for a large group, but you don't have to have a large group. You can kind of set these things up multi-site easily. You can have people without like vid conferencing software, although that is common now. How do I know this? Can sample and verify completeness, unique among qualitative methods. I don't know if I told you guys this, but last semester there was a guy teaching a GIS course across the hall from me at OLC, and he was working on his computer in Zoom to give his lecture. However, he did not have a screen on in the room. The students in the room were only watching his lecture on their computers in front of them. They didn't need that. So, you guys are maybe thinking that Dr. Wallstead might push the expenses down somewhere. The general Pareto is a simple quantitative method. So just asking somebody to essentially give you a Pareto diagram, because they'll weight objects and put them in order, and then you add up the other people's Pareto diagrams and give it as a summary result. And you can do statistics on that, or I can do statistics on that, but I'll tell you where. That's it. We'll start telling you where. This is actually just like the perfect time to break, because we go off into a new subject. And we're let's just go back and call it done for the week. And this is my post. This is my poster I stood in front of in Miami. Sometimes the poster sessions these days aren't actual posters. They have a bunch of screens and people walk by and you stand there for a couple hours and people give you funny looks. No, okay, so or they didn't give me funny looks. They give them. It was a very weird conference. Okay. Let's just. All right. Yeah. Oh, I want to go backwards. Let's just call it done for the week here on slide 74. Slide 74. Pizza? Kevin's going to get pizza. Where's my pen? Done. Done for the week. Is there a game on a?
Well, Kevin doesn't have any classes, so when he's not in class, he's playing this game. Not even playing COD, not even playing COD.
Done for the week.
Actual course. He said to me before last semester, before we even graduated, next semester I'm going to be master prestige. First month, I was like, oh my god. And he's not because he's playing RuneScape instead.
Professor.
Yeah.
For us that attend remotely, is there any reason to even bother to log on Wednesday?
No, don't log on next week. It's next week we'll just have an exam in class, and the session will be I'll hand out the exam, and that'll be it. So no reason to do that if you're logging remotely. Now, if you're a distance student and you're a Rapid City local or roughly so, you can come in and take the exam. Okay. What was it? One fellow lives about 100 miles away, trying to get a proctor. It isn't as much worth the trouble as just driving in. And okay, it's in a very rural area. I might have wanted to drive into town anyway. I know. Um, so um, no, I guess exam next week. No vid lecture. Uh, you can look at the study guide and judge for yourself. It's going to be longer than yesterday's exam. That's for sure. There are some calculations questions, and uh, some of the hints are a little more subtle than they were uh, last night's exam. No live login or video. So usually for example, on Tuesday nights, it's just Kevin and I. But we had about 7 people in. Yeah, five, five just before 6. I mean, a couple of people come in a little later. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm thinking.
And then Abby's probably not here.
I think we might have a dozen or so. I don't know. Okay. So yeah, no live login or video for next week. Just the exam. Um, okay.